In this video, we're going to be talking about price controls, specifically price floors and price ceilings. All right, so let's begin by defining let's just start with price floors. Let's begin by defining what a price floor is, okay? So a price floor is simply a government imposed minimum price, okay? And the price ceiling is just the opposite. Okay. Price ceiling is government imposed maximum price. All right. So in the case of a price floor, the government says to firms, you are not allowed to charge less than a certain price. And in the case of a price ceiling, the government says to firms, you are not allowed to charge more than a certain price. Okay. Now let's see what effect this might have on the market as we've defined it. So if you remember, we defined a market as simply the exchange of goods or services between producers and consumers, right? Somebody is supplying the good and somebody is purchasing or consuming the good, all right? So there's an exchange. And that market, in our simplified model, is fully captured by just two curves, the demand curve and the supply curve. Our supply curve is upward sloping and our demand curve is downward sloping. As an aside, if you have not seen my previous videos on demand and on supply and on the determination of price, I would very, very highly recommend that you watch those first, okay? So before the imposition of any kind of price control, and I should mention, by the way, that these are price controls, okay? It's the government telling you what price you can charge rather than simply letting the market decide, right? Before the imposition of price controls, we have our equilibrium point, complete with our equilibrium quantity and our equilibrium price. Now, before anything happens, let's define this here. Quantity exchanged. Okay, this is going to be the actual quantity that is bought and sold in the market. Now, of course, in a market in equilibrium, the quantity exchange is just the equilibrium quantity, right? And of course, the price is our equilibrium price. Now, let's say the government decided to impose a minimum price or a price floor. Now, what would happen if the government decided that our minimum price in this particular market were P1? The answer is nothing would change, right? Because the government says you cannot charge less than P1, and the firms are like, all right, well, we're already charging PE, which is greater than P1. So P1 as a price floor is completely ineffective. Right? It doesn't do anything. What if the government decided to impose a price floor at PE? Well, same thing, right? Firms are already charging PE, so that would be ineffective. So a price floor, in order to be effective, must be above the equilibrium price. Okay, must be above the equilibrium price to be effective. So let's say the government decided to impose a price floor here. We'll call this PF for a price floor. Okay, now at PF, what is the quantity demanded? Well, that's very easy. Just draw out this line here. And of course, the quantity demanded corresponds to this point on the demand curve, and the quantity supplied corresponds to this point on the supply curve. So this here would be our quantity demanded, and this here would be our quantity supplied. Now, what do we notice? We notice that quantity supplied is greater than quantity demanded, and this is a situation that we refer to as a surplus. Okay? Now, what would be the actual quantity exchanged in this market? The quantity exchanged, okay, would be QD. In this case, our quantity exchanged would be QD. Quantity exchanged under the price floor. Okay, why would it be QD? Well, when you look at this graph, you say, okay, firms want to supply QS, but consumers only want to buy QD. So therefore, this gap here, right, this gap which we defined as a surplus, would not be exchanged. Right? This difference between QS and QD, this extra amount here represented by our purple arrow, that will never actually be sold. It will never actually be exchanged. The actual amount exchanged will simply therefore be QD. Okay? Let's put numbers on this to make it super clear. Let's say firms want to sell 10 apples and consumers want to buy 5 apples. How many apples will actually be sold? The answer is, of course, 5. It's the smaller number. Okay? So, what will happen to price under a price floor? The price will rise from the equilibrium price to the price floor price, and quantity exchanged will decline from the equilibrium quantity down to quantity demanded. Okay, so a price floor creates a surplus, okay, which creates a higher price than usual, than the equilibrium price, and a lower quantity exchanged. Okay, so that's the effect of a price floor. And now let's look at the effect of a price ceiling. Okay, now a price ceiling, of course, will have to obey similar logic to a price floor to be effective, right? If the government decided to impose a maximum price at PF here, that would be completely ineffective, right? Because the market already wants to charge PE. So if the government says, hey, you cannot charge more than PF, suppliers will say, okay, that's fine. We weren't charging PF anyway. We were charging PE, which is less than PF. Okay. Similarly, if the government decided to impose the maximum price or the price ceiling at PE, it would be ineffective for a similar reason. Firms would say, well, we're already charging PE, so this doesn't really change anything for us. So, of course, the government imposed maximum price or the price ceiling must be below equilibrium price to be effective. Right? Okay, let's take a look at how this would look graphically and what effect this would have on price and quantity exchanged. So before the imposition of the price ceiling, we had our equilibrium point corresponding to our equilibrium quantity and our equilibrium price. Okay, now the government decides to impose an effective price ceiling, so it would have to be below PE, right? So let's say that it imposed its price ceiling here, right? PC for price ceiling. And as we did before, we can determine what the quantity supplied and quantity demanded are under this price ceiling. Sorry about that. So that would be our quantity supplied. That would be our quantity demanded. And what we notice is that quantity demanded, in this case, is greater than quantity supplied. And this is what's referred to as a shortage. Okay, so this here is our shortage. Okay, and now we can ask ourselves, okay, what will be the new effective price? Well, of course, the new price will just be PC, right? That'll be our price. So the market wants to push up to PE, but it can't, right? Because the government is imposing a maximum. I should have actually said that earlier about this. When the price floor is imposed at PF, the market wants to go down to PE, but it can't, right? Because the government is imposing a minimum, right? So PF would be the effective price. So similarly over here, our actual price would be PC. So what happens to prices? Well, from our equilibrium price, prices will rise. They will fall, right? Until PC. Okay, so PC will be our new effective price. And now what will the quantity exchanged be? Well, in this case, you have consumers who want to buy QD, but suppliers only want to supply QS, right? So once all of QS is sold, this extra amount here that consumers want, this shortage, will not actually be exchanged, okay? So the quantity exchanged, in this case, is QS. So quantity exchanged falls to QS. Now notice, and we're going to tease out the implications of this in our next video, but notice that in both cases, okay, quantity exchanged actually falls, okay? So the amount of stuff that is actually exchanged in the marketplace has fallen in both cases. Okay, so that's how price controls work. We explored price ceilings and price floors. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the actual result that has on society's welfare. Okay, so if you found this video useful, please like and subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment down below if you have suggestions for further videos. Share this video and others like it with your friends and colleagues and classmates. And I will see you in the next video.